Hi everyone! The previous video was about the controller, and today we will continue this topic and in more details study routing. So don't waste time and let's go! So what is routing needed for? In a global sense, it's defined which action to run for incoming URL. There are several ways to configure routes. We have already seen two. These are the attributes and annotations that define the route directly in the controller. But we can also configure routes in YAML, XML and PHP files. Whichever configuration method you choose, they will do the same thing. It is recommended to use attributes to configure routes, since they have a compact notation, and it is also convenient when the route and the method the route calls are in the same place. Let's start from annotations. Before starting to use annotations, you need to install Doctrine in the Docker container inside PHP service. Use this command. But if you use PHP 7 or earlier version, first you need to install additional dependency using this command. I use PHP 8.1.0, so I don't need that dependency. I only need to install Doctrine. I installed it before. So let's define route in our first controller using annotations. As you can see, annotation route works. So, what's happened here? Let's take a look at the details. Here we define the route that called test. And when test route matches with request URL that sent user from browser, the application runs the hello world method of the myFirstController class. There is one feature you should know. If URL has some parameters in the query string, it also will match with route. I'll show an example. And please keep in mind that each route name must be unique in the application. And one more thing that I need to tell about is multiply PHP classes in the same file. In such case, Symfony loads only rows from the first class, and it will ignore other rows. Oh, I forgot to add here the function return type. Okay. Now I want to redefine this row using attributes. You can use attributes right away if you use PHP 8 or higher versions. For these versions of PHP, attributes are native. Also, as I said earlier, you can define rows in a separate YAML, XML or PHP file. They don't require any extra dependency, but the main disadvantage is that you have to work with several files. Let's try to define row in YAML file. This is the method name of our controller. If the action is implemented as the invoke method of the controller class, simply skip this part. Now let's define the row using XML. For this, let's find example in Symfony documentation and then I'll adapt it. We need to do one more thing. By default, Symfony loads the rows defined in YAML format. If you need to define row in XML or PHP file, you need to add support for these formats in kernel.php file. I'll show how to do it. And also let's try to define route in PHP file. Let's copy the example from the documentation. No matter how you define routes, all methods will have the same functionality. The only difference is in the syntax. Therefore, in order not to make the video too long, I will show all the following examples using attributes. If you need to define a route in the other way, you can always go to the official Symfony documentation. It's really clear. Let's move on to the HTTP request methods in routes. By default, routes match any HTTP method, but we can't restrict it. In that case, each route have to match the given method. I'll show you with an example, and I'll use Postman to send the request. So, let's go. application will grow and you'll have a lot of roads. There will be a need to debug them. First command that I'll show you displays a list with all roads in your application. They will be displayed in the same order in which Symfony evaluates them. As you can see in the get and in the post method of the test URL, I forgot add name of the road. Let's fix it. To display one road in details, add to the previous command the road name or its part. Sometimes it happens that some URL does not execute the controller action that you expected. In this case, you can use the command that will show which road will match the given URL. As you can see, it finds matches. And open information about road in detail. Let's try this command with test road. So, as you can see, it finds first road and then stop. Roads are very flexible and can be configured based on arbitrary logic. And for this you can use the condition option. I'll show an example. But first we need to install the expression language component. This component provides an engine that can compile and evaluate expressions. Let's back to the roads condition option. in Postman. I'll create new request for this road, and then we will check if this condition works or not. The condition option works. The value of the condition option can be any valid expression of the expression language component. And also you can use variables created by Symfony as value of the condition option. Context. It holds the main information about the road being matched. Request. It represents the current request. Params. It represents an array of matched road parameters for the current road. I'll show the example with this variable, but in more detail I'll tell about road parameters further in the video. In the condition option, you can use such function as env to make application dynamic. It's common practice to use env variables to configure it. An env function returns the value of variables using environment variable processors. Also, you can use service function. You can create the condition service, and if you add this attribute in your service, I'll show it. it becomes possible to use such service in the condition. Expressions that you put in the value of the condition option are compiled to PHP. Accordingly, it doesn't require additional resources except for the execution time of the basic PHP. Now, let's proceed to a detailed study of the road parameters. There are roads that never change, but there are a lot of roads with a dynamic part in the URL. For example, it can be a page number or an entity ID and so on. Symfony uses road parameters to define this variable part. As you can see here, the variable part is wrapped in curly brackets, and the name of the variable's part have to be unique. You can define any number of parameters in the road, but each parameter can be used on each road only at once. For example, now let's talk about parameters validation. We need to almost identical URL with only different variable parts. What happens if we try to send requests to both of this URL? As you can see, both roads matched, and Symfony used the road that was defined first. To avoid this behavior, you can add some validation to the variable part of the road. Use for this the requirements option. Let's check how it works. The requirements option defines the PHP regular expressions that road parameters must match for the entire road to match. In this case, regular expression matches with all letters in lower and uppercase and also with a dash and an underscore. In this case, regular expression matches with a digit of any length. If you want to define complex regular expressions once and then use it in different roads, you can include configuration parameters in the road requirement or in the road path too. I'll show it. Also, requirements can be inlined in each parameter using the syntax. Such approach to define requirements makes configuration more concise. This configuration is equal to but in this case, if requirements are complex, road readability can decrease. As a value of the requirements option, you can use PCRE Unicode properties. It's supported. I'll show the example. It means that you can use any uppercase character in any language and it can be any length. As you can see, it works. Actually, it's mean hello world in Ukrainian. If you add a parameter to a road, it must have a value. For example, in this case, parameter becomes required and it have to be defined, or this URL will not work. So, if you want in this case matches will be found, you have to define default value to the parameter. There are several ways to do that. If you use attributes or annotations, you can define default value in the arguments of the controller action. Now when you visit new test, it will match to this road because the parameter has default value. Also, default value can be inlined in each parameter. For this, you can use this syntax. Let's try it. And it can be combined with inlined requirements in this way. In Symfony, order in which roads are defined is important. If the path of a road matches many different patterns, the first match will be executed. This will cause to unexpected behavior of the application. To control priority of the road in YAML or XML file, you can simply move the road definitions up or down. If you use attributes or annotations, you can do it using priority option. The default value of priority option, if it wasn't defined, is 0. And as you guessed, expected value of this parameter is integer. Roads with higher priority are sorted before roads with lower priority. I'll show the example. As you can see, first match was executed. Let's add priority parameter. Now everything works correctly. In the road, you can use not only your own parameters, but also special parameters created by Symfony. The first one, controller. It's defined which controller and action is executed when the road is matched. The next one is format. This special parameter can be used, for example, for setting the content type of the response. Fragment. Fragment is the optional last part of the URL that starts from hash, and this special parameter used to set the fragment identifier. And one more, local. Using this special parameter, you can set the local on the request. In other words, if user visits URL for example, something like this. The local English will automatically be set as a local for the current request. In the default option, you can use extra parameters that not included in the road configuration. This gives you opportunity to pass extra arguments to the controller of the roads. I'll show it. There is one important thing you should be aware of when setting a parameter value in a road. It must not contain a slash. The slash is used to separate parts of the URL, and therefore the slash in the parameter value will result in no match being found for the current URL. You certainly can change the parameter requirements to be more permissive. But if the road defines several parameters and you apply this permissive regular expression to all of them, you might get unexpected results. Let's remove unnecessary action, and then I will show what road groups and prefixes are. As you can see, roads have common parts, and they can also have common options, for example, like name. Here, here, and here. That's why Symfony includes a feature to share a road configuration. I'll show you how it works with an example. common configuration in the route attribute above the class. In other routing formats, you can also define the common configuration using options when importing the routes.
I hope you enjoy this video and see you next time.